August 3rd, 1940, Berlin. The summer heat pressed against the Reich Chancellery windows like an unwelcome guest. Inside Conference Room 7, Colonel Maximilian Vogel stood at attention, his uniform crisp, despite the temperature, his face betraying nothing. 42 years old, veteran of Poland and France, the Wehrmacht's golden boy of operational planning. 28 days to conquer Poland, 42 days to shatter France. The numbers were carved into his reputation like medals into bronze. Now Chancellor Victor Schreiber circled him like a predator studying prey. "Colonel Vogel, you have proven yourself a master of speed and precision. Poland fell faster than anyone predicted. France collapsed while the world still expected a long war." Schreiber's voice filled the room. "I have a new assignment for you." Vogel's spine straightened imperceptibly. Every soldier knows that tone, the one that precedes impossible orders. "Operation Seelover, Sea Lion. You will plan the invasion of Britain." The words hung in the air like gun smoke. "You have 6 weeks, Colonel. The invasion fleet must be ready by mid-September when the tides are optimal. The Navy will provide transportation. The Luftwaffe will provide air superiority. Your task is to make it work, to apply the same brilliance that conquered France to the conquest of Britain." Schreiber placed a map on the table between them. The English Channel, a thin strip of blue separating continental Europe from the British Isles. 21 miles of water. Vogel stared at that blue strip. Something cold settled in his chest. Poland had been plains and rivers. France had been roads and rail lines. Both were land. Solid ground where tanks could roll and infantry could march and supply columns could follow. This was water. "Mein Führer, has the Navy confirmed they can protect a channel crossing?" Schreiber's expression hardened. "The Navy will do their duty. The Luftwaffe is destroying the Royal Air Force as we speak. By September, British skies will belong to Germany. The Channel will be ours to cross. And British naval forces. The Navy assures me they can manage whatever the British send. Your concern is the land operation, Colonel, getting our divisions across and onto British soil. Establishing beachheads, moving inland, the actual conquest." Vogel looked down at the map again. Dover to Calais, the narrowest point, 21 miles. He had conquered 400 miles of French territory in 6 weeks. Surely 21 miles of water could not be more difficult. Surely. "I will begin immediately, mein Führer." "Good. Dismissed." Vogel saluted, walked from the room. His footsteps echoed on marble floors. Outside Berlin, summer sunshine mocked him with its brightness. He had just received the most important assignment of his career. So why did his hands feel cold? 3 days later, Vogel stood in a very different room. The Naval High Command building in Berlin smelled of salt and old leather. Maps of coastlines covered every wall. Model ships sat frozen in hypothetical battles on planning tables. Grand Admiral Ernst Richter waited for him. 64 years old. Face weathered by decades of naval service. Iron Cross from the Battle of Jutland pinned to his chest. The medal was 24 years old now, but Richter wore it like a warning. "Colonel Vogel, I've been expecting you." They shook hands. Richter's grip was firm, his palm calloused. "Admiral, I need naval transport assessments for Operation Seelover, capacity calculations, crossing times, protection capabilities for the invasion fleet." Richter gestured to a table covered in documents. "I have prepared the numbers. Sit." Vogel sat. Richter poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher. The simple gesture felt oddly ceremonial. Before we discuss capabilities, Colonel, let me ask you something. Have you ever been at sea during combat? No, Admiral. My experience is land warfare. Then let me educate you. Richter opened a folder. April 1940. Narvik, Norway. British destroyers entered the fjord through minefields and shore batteries to attack our naval forces. They destroyed 10 of our ships in 2 engagements. In the second battle, the battleship HMS Warspite sailed directly into the fjord with destroyer escorts and systematically eliminated our remaining vessels at point-blank range. Richter's finger traced the fjord on a map. The British lost ships. They accepted casualties. But they accomplished their mission because British naval doctrine is aggressive. They do not defend, they attack. They ram if necessary. They sacrifice vessels to achieve objectives. He closed the folder. That is what awaits your invasion fleet in the English Channel, Colonel. Not cautious defense, aggressive destruction. Vogel felt that cold sensation again. What are our comparative strengths? Richter pulled out a second folder. This one was thinner. The Royal Navy currently maintains in home waters 5 battleships, 2 battle cruisers, 11 cruisers positioned in channel approaches, over 30 destroyers at immediate readiness, multiple submarine flotillas. He opened the folder. A single page. The Kriegsmarine has available for channel operations 0 battleships. Bismarck and Tirpitz are still under construction. 2 cruisers, 4 destroyers capable of channel operations, minimal submarine assets. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. 4 destroyers, Admiral. 4 against 30 plus. Vogel did the mathematics automatically. Force ratio 7.5 to 1. Unacceptable by any military standard. Can we concentrate more assets? Where, Colonel, our capital ships are not ready. Our destroyer fleet is committed to convoy protection in the Atlantic. We are a river and coastal navy being asked to fight the world's dominant ocean navy in their home waters. Richter leaned forward. Your invasion plan calls for 1,700 barges to transport 13 divisions. River barges, Colonel. Flat-bottomed vessels designed for canal traffic. They will be towed across the channel at 4 knots, walking speed. The crossing will take 10 hours minimum in daylight. He pulled out photographs. Barges in Dutch canals. Wide, ungainly, defenseless. British destroyers make 30 knots. They mount guns that can shred a barge at 4,000 yards. One destroyer reaching a transport column kills thousands, and they will send more than 1 destroyer. Vogel stared at the photographs. In his mind, he saw the mathematics transforming into bodies in water. Admiral, is this operation possible? Richter's pause lasted 3 heartbeats. Max, may I call you Max? Of course, Admiral. Max, between these walls, speaking as one professional to another, no. This operation is not possible. Not with current naval forces. Not against the Royal Navy. But I cannot say this in official assessments. Not yet. The High Command expects optimism. So I will provide technical objections, logistical concerns, weather dependencies, and you in your planning will discover the same truth I already know. The old Admiral's eyes held something like pity. You are a brilliant tactician, Colonel. Your plans for Poland and France were works of art, but those were land campaigns. This is a naval operation, and in naval operations the British have been perfecting their craft for 300 years. We have been practicing for 3 campaigns. Vogel felt the weight of those words settling on his shoulders like an iron cloak. Thank you for your honesty, Admiral. Use it wisely. And Max, the calculations you're about to do, they will keep you awake at night. I know. They have kept me awake for weeks. August 14th. A beach in occupied France. Lieutenant Conrad Eisenberg stood watching the catastrophe unfold with a notebook in one hand and growing horror in his chest. 28 years old, combat engineer, brilliant with explosives and fortifications. Vogel had personally selected him for this observation mission. "Watch the training exercise," Vogel had said. "Report honestly on what you see." Eisenberg was watching. He was seeing. He wished he were not. Across 500 yards of French coastline, a single German battalion attempted a practice amphibious landing. No enemy opposition. Calm seas. Clear weather. Every advantage. The barges approached the beach at 4 knots exactly as they would in the real operation. Infantry packed shoulder-to-shoulder equipment stacked in the center horses tied to makeshift rails. The first barge grounded 30 yards from shore, too deep. Soldiers jumped into water that immediately reached their chests. Equipment packs pulled them down. Rifles went under. Men struggled, thrashing. The second barge hit a sandbar and stuck. Its tow rope snapped. The vessel swung broadside to the waves and began taking water over the gunwale. The third barge grounded properly, but its front ramp jammed. Soldiers tried to climb over the sides. One fell between the barge and the beach. His scream cut short as the barge shifted in the surf. Eisenberg wrote in his notebook, "First wave, significant casualties even without enemy contact. Estimate 50% combat ineffective before engaging any opposition." The battalion commander stood beside him, face ashen. "This is without British machine guns," the commander said quietly. "Without artillery, without air attack, just trying to get ashore in calm water." Eisenberg nodded, still writing. "Equipment loss catastrophic. Radio gear destroyed by water. Heavy weapons unable to land. Horses drowned or panicked. Command and control completely broken." The exercise continued for 2 more hours. It did not improve. By the end, Eisenberg's notebook contained 12 pages of detailed observations. Every page documented failure. Every page proved the same conclusion. That evening, he telephoned Vogel in Berlin. "Sir, I need to report on the training exercise." "Go ahead, Conrad." "Sir, it was a disaster. 50% casualties before a single shot fired. Equipment losses total. No coordination possible, and this was optimal conditions." Silence on the line. "Conrad, if we attempted this operation under fire, British artillery machine guns, air attack, what would you estimate?" Eisenberg closed his eyes. Saw the beach again. Added British defenders to the image. "Sir, I estimate 80 to 90% casualties before securing the beach. Possibly higher. This is not an exaggeration. The barges cannot function as landing craft. The men cannot disembark under fire. The equipment cannot be protected. It would be slaughter." More silence. "Write your report, Conrad. Detailed, honest. Send it directly to me." "Sir, this report will contradict the operational plan." "I know. Send it anyway." The line went dead. Eisenberg sat in his temporary office, staring at his notes. 12 pages that said the same thing in 12 different ways. "We cannot do this. We will die trying. Someone needs to stop this." He began typing the formal report. His hands shook slightly on the keys. In the margin of his notebook he had written something during the exercise. A single word underlined twice, slaughter. Now he crossed it out. The formal report required clinical language, but that word remained in his memory, seared there like a brand. August 29th. Vogel's office in Wehrmacht High Command, Berlin. 3 weeks had passed since the assignment. 3 weeks of calculations and assessments and reports stacking on his desk like accusations. The numbers did not lie. They never lied. Vogel sat alone in lamplight, surrounded by documents that all said the same thing. Naval assessment from Richter. Cannot protect crossing. Force ratio 7-1 against. British destroyer doctrine emphasizes aggressive attack. Estimate 80% transport losses during crossing. Luftwaffe intelligence report RAF fighter production exceeds previous estimates. British producing approximately 560 aircraft monthly against German estimate of 300. Air superiority not guaranteed. Enemy radar network remains functional despite attacks. Abwehr intelligence summary from Werner Steiner. Human intelligence in Britain severely compromised. Aerial reconnaissance incomplete. Cannot confirm British troop strength, coastal defence positions or reserve deployments, operating on assumptions not verified data. Eisenberg's training disaster report. 50% casualties without enemy fire. Recommend operation cancellation pending development of proper landing craft and amphibious doctrine. And Vogel's own calculations. The ones he had done in secret. The ones that turned his stomach every time he reviewed them. He spread them across his desk now. Clean paper, precise handwriting, mathematical certainty. Operation Seelowe casualty projection. First wave force, 160,000 men. Beach assault casualties under fire, 85 to 90%. Estimated killed/wounded, securing beach, 136,000 to 144,000. Second wave viability, 0 landing zones under artillery fire. First wave, unable to secure ports. Supply sustainability. Impossible, Royal Navy interdiction. Certain, after 24 hours. Isolated, first wave survivors, surrounded, no resupply. Facing mobile British reserves. Projected total force loss, 95%. Plus, success. Probability, 0.3%. Professional recommendation. Operation not viable. The numbers sat there like tombstones. Nearly 150,000 dead, give or take a few thousand. The margin of error on mass casualties. Vogel had commanded operations where men died. Poland, France. He understood that war meant death, but those operations had been calculated risks with reasonable probability of success. This was not calculated risk. This was calculated certainty of failure. He stood, walked to his window. Berlin stretched below, streetlights glowing in the August darkness. Somewhere in that city, young men were training for Operation Seelowe, practicing embarkation drills, studying maps of British beaches, believing in their commanders, believing in him. How many of those young men would die because he had created a plan that led them into a killing zone? Professional soldiers followed orders. That was discipline. That was duty. But professional soldiers also told the truth about what was possible and what was suicide. Vogel had built his career on mathematical precision, on operational excellence, on winning through superior planning. Now his superior planning was proving that the operation could not be won. So what was his duty? Execute the order he had been given, knowing it would fail, or speak the truth, knowing it would end his career. He returned to his desk, picked up the casualty projections, read them again. 140,000 dead. The telephone sat beside his elbow. He could call Richter, call Steiner, call Bachmann at Army High Command, build a coalition, present unified evidence that the operation was impossible. Or he could file his assessment as requested. Follow the chain of command. Let senior officers make the decision. Let someone else carry the weight of 140,000 bodies. Vogel set down the papers, sat in silence. Outside his window, Berlin slept peacefully. The street lights glowed. The summer night pressed warm and gentle against the glass. In 6 weeks, if nothing changed, the invasion fleet would sail. Barges full of men who trusted their commanders, who believed in the plan, who expected to land on British beaches and march to victory. Instead, they would drown in the English Channel or die on British sand while machine guns cut them down like wheat before a scythe, unless someone stopped it, unless someone stood up and said the words that ended careers but saved lives. Vogel pulled out a piece of personal stationery, not official Wehrmacht paper, just plain white paper from his desk drawer. He wrote carefully, not a report, a letter. My dearest Anna, I am facing a decision that will define who I am. Not as a soldier, but as a man. I have been given an order that I know not, suspect, not fear, but mathematically know will result in the deaths of 140,000 of our soldiers. The operation is impossible. The numbers prove it. Every professional assessment confirms it. I can remain silent. File my objections through proper channels and let superior officers decide. This is the safe path, the obedient path. Or I can speak, loudly, clearly, definitively. I can stand before the High Command and say what needs to be said. This operation will fail. These men will die. We must not do this. This path ends my career, possibly worse. But if I stay silent and 140,000 men die because I was too much a coward to speak truth to power, how do I live with that? You married a soldier. You knew that meant I might die for my country. But did you know it might mean I have to risk everything not to lead other soldiers to meaningless death? I don't know what I will do yet, but I needed to write these words to clarify my thoughts. I love you, whatever comes. Max. He folded the letter carefully, did not seal it, would never send it. He thought of Anna waiting in their apartment across the city, of the photograph on his desk, her smile their wedding day, a world before war. She had married a soldier who calculated logistics. Now that soldier had to calculate whether 140,000 lives were worth his career. But writing it had clarified something. He was not just a calculator of casualties. He was the man who had to decide what to do with those calculations. Vogel looked at his desk one more time. Reports, numbers, evidence, all of it pointed to one conclusion. Tomorrow, he would start building the case. Not a private assessment, a coalition. Multiple branches of the Wehrmacht all saying the same thing. This operation cannot succeed. These men cannot be saved by tactics or bravery or determination. They can only be saved by the truth. And if speaking that truth cost Maximilian Vogel his career, his reputation, his future, well, some prices were worth paying. He turned off his desk lamp, walked to the door, paused, looked back at the casualty projections one final time. 140,000 lives. The weight settled on his shoulders like a cloak he would wear for the rest of his life. He stepped into the hallway, closed the door behind him. The decision was made. Now came the hard part, following through. September 1st, 1940, Wehrmacht High Command, Berlin. 4 weeks had passed since Vogel received his impossible assignment. 4 weeks of assembling evidence like a prosecutor building a case. 4 weeks of watching the invasion deadline approach like an executioner's appointment. The master assessment sat on his desk. 63 pages. Charts, tables, calculations, testimonies from every branch of the Wehrmacht, all of it pointing to one conclusion. But evidence meant nothing without witnesses. Numbers meant nothing without voices willing to speak them. Vogel needed a coalition. He started with the man who had warned him first. Grand Admiral Ernst Richter's office overlooked the Spree River. Morning light reflected off water, casting shifting patterns on maps of coastlines and naval engagements. The old admiral stood at his window, hands clasped behind his back, watching a barge move slowly downstream. 4 knots, walking speed. That is how fast your invasion fleet will move, Max. Except the channel has currents and tides.
And the Royal Navy? Vogel stood beside him.
Two men watching a river that suddenly seemed vast as an ocean. Admiral, I need your official assessment, on the record, for presentation to the High Command. You are building a case. Yes? Against the Chancellor's directive. Against an operation that will kill 140,000 men. Richter turned from the window. His face carried the weight of Jutland of Narvik of 24 years, watching men die at sea.
What exactly are you proposing, Colonel? Unified testimony, Navy, Army, Luftwaffe, Intelligence, Abwehr, all branches presenting the same conclusion: Operation Seelöwe is not viable with current capabilities. That is insubordination. That is honest military assessment. Richter walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a folder marked Seelöwe, Kriegsmarine Evaluation. I wrote this 3 weeks ago, filed it, buried it in bureaucracy because no one wanted to hear it.
He slid the folder across to Vogel. Force comparison analysis, weather dependencies, British naval doctrine assessment. Every page says the same thing: we cannot protect the crossing. Vogel opened the folder, read the first page, the second, the third, professional, detailed, devastating. Why didn't you present this directly to the Chancellor? Because I am a naval officer, Max. I speak for the Kriegsmarine. The Chancellor can dismiss naval concerns as institutional bias.
He can say the Luftwaffe will compensate, or that the Army's speed will overcome naval deficiencies.
Richter's eyes hardened. But you are the operational planner. You synthesize all branches. You make the final assessment of feasibility. When you say it cannot work, that is not naval bias. That is mathematical certainty. So you want me to be the voice. I want you to be the conscience. Use my assessment. Use Steiner's intelligence gaps. Use the Luftwaffe's admission that air superiority is not guaranteed. Compile them. Present them. Make the case that no single branch can make alone. Richter placed a hand on Vogel's shoulder. The gesture felt like a benediction. You are young enough that ending your career now still leaves you a life, Max. I am 64. I have fought my wars. But these young men loading into barges they have not lived yet. Someone has to speak for them. Someone has to calculate the cost and say it is too high. And if the Chancellor orders the operation anyway, then we will have done our duty as professional soldiers. We will have told the truth. What happens after that is on his conscience, not ours. Vogel carefully closed the folder, held it like a weapon. I will include your assessment in the master document. Will you speak it yourself? At the final presentation, Richter straightened. Old spine, old pride, old determination. I will speak first. Naval protection impossible. No equivocation. No political hedging. The Kriegsmarine cannot guarantee safe passage. Let the record show an admiral said it clearly. They shook hands. The grip lasted 3 heartbeats. Vogel left with the folder under his arm. 1 voice secured, 2 more to go. The Abwehr headquarters smelled of cigarette smoke and secrets. Intelligence Chief Werner Steiner sat behind a desk covered in reports marked unverified and reliability questionable and suspected British deception. 53 years old. Thin face. Eyes that had read too many lies to trust easily. Colonel Vogel, you are here about Seelöwe intelligence. I am here about the lack of Seelöwe intelligence. Steiner smiled without humour, gestured to the reports. I have been collecting these for 4 weeks. Everyone is questionable at best, enemy deception at worst. British counterintelligence has compromised our agent network. We are receiving exactly what they want us to receive. Can you confirm British troop strength? No. Coastal defence positions. Approximately 40%. The rest are camouflaged or mobile. Royal Navy destroyer movements. Partial tracking only. They could concentrate forces in hours, and we would not know until they appeared. RAF fighter production? Steiner pulled out a specific report, slid it across the desk. Our estimate 300 aircraft per month. Intercepted British manufacturing data suggests 560, nearly double. Every day we delay, they grow stronger. Vogel looked at the numbers, added them to his mental calculations. One more impossibility confirmed. Werner, I am compiling a unified assessment. All branches, same conclusion, insufficient capabilities, inadequate intelligence operation, not viable. Will you contribute official testimony? Steiner leaned back in his chair, studied Vogel with those two careful eyes. You understand what you are doing. This is not a staff disagreement. This is telling the Chancellor his flagship operation cannot proceed. I understand. You will end your career. Better my career than 140,000 lives. Steiner was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer, pulled out a thin folder. I wrote this last week, marked it personal assessment, not official, because official assessments that contradict the Chancellor have a way of destroying the men who write them. He opened the folder. But you are right. Professional integrity demands honesty. He read aloud, voice flat, clinical. Intelligence Assessment Operation Seelover. Conclusion. We are planning the largest amphibious operation in military history while blind to enemy capabilities. Human intelligence compromised. Aerial reconnaissance incomplete. Electronic intelligence minimal. Cannot confirm basic operational requirements. Enemy strength positions intentions. Professional recommendation. Postpone operation. Pending intelligence network reconstruction. Minimum 6 months. He closed the folder, looked at Vogel. I will speak this. Third in sequence after Navy and Army. Let the record show that German intelligence could not provide the information necessary for competent planning. Let history know we tried to stop this. Vogel added the folder to his growing collection. 2 voices. One more. The hardest one. General Klaus Bachmann's office in Army High Command was austere. No decorations beyond a single iron cross. No photographs. Just maps and operational charts and the tools of professional war-making. 56 years old. Chief of Army General Staff. Vogel's direct superior. The man who had given Vogel the assignment in the first place. Sir, I need to present my final assessment on Operation Seelover. Bachmann did not look up from the document he was reading. Your preliminary reports have been concerning Colonel. I assume the final assessment is no more optimistic. Sir, the final assessment concludes the operation is not viable with available forces and intelligence. Now Bachmann looked up. His face showed nothing. Not viable. That is a strong conclusion. Sir, the numbers are unambiguous. Naval protection inadequate. Air superiority not guaranteed. Intelligence insufficient. Casualties projected at 85 to 90% first wave. Success probability 0.3%. This is not tactical difficulty. This is mathematical impossibility. Bachmann set down his reading, folded his hands on the desk. Max, I have known you for 6 years. Poland-France staff assignments before that. You are the best operational planner in the Wehrmacht. Meticulous, brilliant, never prone to exaggeration. He paused. So when you tell me an operation is mathematically impossible, I believe you. The question is, what do we do with that belief? Sir, I propose unified testimony. Richter will present naval impossibility. Steiner will present intelligence inadequacy. I will present operational calculations. All branches, same conclusion presented directly to the Chancellor. That is close to mutiny, Colonel. That is professional military assessment, sir. Bachmann stood, walked to his window, looked out over Berlin. Do you know what happens to officers who tell the Chancellor his strategies are wrong? Yes, sir.
Do you know what happens to the army if we execute an operation that fails catastrophically, if we lose 13 divisions in a single disastrous campaign, if the Wehrmacht, the force that conquered Europe, drowns in the English Channel? Yes, sir. Then you understand the calculus. Risk a few careers now to save the entire army later.
Bachmann turned from the window. I will support your assessment, Max. Not just support, I will endorse it. The Army General Staff will formally state that Operation Seelover requires conditions we cannot guarantee: naval supremacy, air supremacy, adequate intelligence, proper landing craft, none of which we have. He walked to his desk, pulled out official stationery, began writing. We will request a meeting with the Chancellor. Full staff presentation, September 17th. You will present operational analysis. Richter will present naval assessment. Steiner will present intelligence gaps. I will provide final army endorsement. 4 branches. 1 conclusion. Professional military judgment says stop. Vogel felt something release in his chest, a tension he had carried for weeks. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet, Max. We are about to commit professional suicide together, but we are doing it for the right reason. No soldier should die in an operation doomed from the start. That is not war, that is murder, and we are soldiers, not murderers. Bachmann finished writing, sealed the letter. Meeting request goes out today. We have 16 days to prepare the most important presentation of our careers. Use them well. While Vogel built his coalition in Berlin across the English Channel forces, he could not see prepared for the invasion he was trying to stop. Portsmouth Naval Base. Admiral James Thornton stood on the deck of HMS Renown, watching destroyer squadrons conduct formation drills in the Channel approaches. 30 destroyers, each one a weapon designed for exactly this scenario, defending British waters from invasion. Thornton had given his commanders an order that would have seemed barbaric in peacetime. In war, it was mathematics. If German barges enter the Channel, you are authorized to ram them. 1 destroyer for 1 transport column is favorable exchange. We have 30 ships. They will have hundreds of barges. Trade aggressively. Every captain had acknowledged without hesitation. The Royal Navy had spent 3 centuries learning to fight in these waters. They would not yield them to river barges and improvised invasion fleets. Farther inland at RAF Bentley Priory, Air Marshal Robert Sinclair reviewed the latest production figures from British aircraft factories. August production 476 fighters. July production 496 fighters. German intelligence estimated 300 per month. They were wrong by nearly 50%. Every Spitfire they failed to account for was another aircraft that would contest an invasion fleet. Sinclair's strategy was simple: maintain credible force in being. As long as RAF Fighter Command could put aircraft over the Channel, the Germans could not guarantee air supremacy. And without air supremacy, transport barges became floating coffins. Along the southern coast, Sergeant Thomas Blackwell supervised the final preparations of beach defences near Brighton, 45 years old. Home Guard commander, veteran of the Somme, where he had watched machine guns cut down battalions like wheat. He had sworn then never to see such slaughter again. Now he was preparing to create it, if necessary, on British sand. He had spent 4 weeks transforming these beaches into killing grounds. Artillery every 500 yards pre-sighted for barge approach routes. Pillboxes with interlocking fields of fire. Mines, barbed wire, tank traps. German aerial reconnaissance saw beaches. They did not see the weapons hidden beneath camouflage nets positioned in tree lines buried in sand. Blackwell's men were not professional soldiers. They were butchers and teachers and shopkeepers. But many had fought in the Great War. They knew what machine guns did to men crossing open ground. They would hold these beaches, or they would die trying. And the terrible irony
The irony that Vogel could not know that German intelligence could not confirm that would make his calculations seem optimistic rather than pessimistic. Britain was not preparing defense. Britain was preparing slaughter. The Royal Navy would not cautiously defend. They would aggressively attack. The RAF would not preserve forces. They would concentrate everything on the invasion zones. The coastal defenders would not fight professionally. They would fight desperately with the fury of men defending their homes. Vogel's calculation of 85% casualties assumed rational British defence. The reality would have been 95% or higher. But Vogel did not know this, could not know this. German intelligence was blind. Vogel was planning against an enemy he could only estimate, making calculations based on incomplete data. And still his calculations said impossible. If he had known the full truth, if he had seen Thornton's ramming authorization, Sinclair's production figures, Blackwell's killing grounds, he would have calculated 0%, not 0.3, 0, complete annihilation, total loss, mathematical certainty of catastrophe. But even without that knowledge, his numbers were clear enough.
September 6th, Vogel's office, late evening, 11 days until the presentation. The master assessment was nearly complete. 63 pages of evidence, charts showing force comparisons, tables calculating casualty rates, testimony from each branch of the Wehrmacht, all of it saying the same thing in different technical languages. We cannot do this. Konrad Eisenberg sat across from Vogel's desk, reading through the final section. The young lieutenant's face was pale.
Sir, this is the most comprehensive dismantling of an operational plan I have ever seen. You have proven impossibility from every angle. Naval, air, intelligence, logistics, training, every single factor says failure. That is the point, Konrad. When we present this to the Chancellor, there can be no ambiguity, no room for optimism or hope or political maneuvering, just mathematics. Eisenberg set down the pages. Sir, why are we still continuing with preparations? Why are men still loading barges, training for beach assaults, positioning for an operation we know cannot succeed? Vogel leaned back in his chair. The question hung between them like smoke. Because I have not been ordered to stop. Sir, with respect, that is not an answer. You are the operational planner. If you know this will fail, if you have proof it will fail, why continue planning? What would you have me do? Lieutenant refused the assignment. Stop preparations without authorization. I would have you speak truth to power, sir. Planning honestly does not mean just calculating what will happen if we proceed. It means saying when something cannot work, when continuation is waste, when professional integrity demands we stop. The words landed like artillery shells. Eisenberg's face flushed slightly, realizing he had just lectured a superior officer. But Vogel did not reprimand him. Instead, he stood, walked to his window, looked out over Berlin in twilight. You are right, Konrad. Silence. Professional integrity demands truth, not technical objections buried in reports, not careful diplomatic language. Truth. Spoken clearly, regardless of consequences. He turned from the window. The presentation to the Chancellor is in 11 days. Richter will speak naval impossibility. Steiner will speak intelligence inadequacy. Bachmann will speak army requirements we cannot meet. And I will speak the conclusion that synthesizes all of it. This operation will fail. These men will die. We must not do this. Eisenberg stood, snapped to attention not from military protocol but from something deeper. Respect. Recognition. Sir, if I may, you are doing what every soldier hopes his commander will do.
protect his men, even from their own high command. After Eisenberg left, Vogel sat alone with his assessment. The evidence was complete. The coalition was built. The presentation was scheduled. Now came the hardest part: waiting. September 16th, 20 hours until the meeting. Vogel could not sleep. He sat at his desk in his quarters lamp, casting shadows, the master assessment open before him. 63 pages he had read 100 times. 63 pages he would read once more. The casualty calculations stared up at him. Cold numbers, clinical projections, mathematical certainty of death. First wave casualties 136,000 to 144,000. He thought about those numbers, tried to comprehend them, failed. A single soldier dying was a tragedy you could understand. A name, a family, a life ended. 140,000 deaths were a statistic, an abstraction, too large for human comprehension. So Vogel tried to make it smaller, more real. 140,000 men. If you shook hands with each one for just 5 seconds, it would take 19 days of continuous handshaking. If they stood in a line, the line would stretch 70 miles. If you learned one name per minute, it would take 97 days to know them all. 140,000 lives that would end in the Channel or on British beaches because someone gave an order and someone else obeyed it, unless someone stopped it. Vogel pulled out personal stationery, not official, not for files or records, just paper. He wrote carefully, knowing he would never send this, knowing it was just for him.
For clarity, my dearest Anna, tomorrow I will walk into a conference room and commit professional suicide.
I will tell the Chancellor that his operation cannot succeed, that the numbers prove it. That professional military assessment demands we stop. This will end my career. Possibly worse. But I have calculated a different equation these past weeks. Not just casualty rates and force ratios, a moral calculation. If I stay silent, 140,000 men die because I was too much a coward to speak. I would live with that knowledge every day for the rest of my life. I would see their faces in every reflection, hear their voices in every silence. If I speak, I lose everything I have built. 20 years of service, every promotion, every achievement, gone. But I keep something more valuable. I keep the knowledge that I tried, that I stood before power with truth, that I chose conscience over career. Tomorrow I may be court-martialed, dismissed, imprisoned. But I will not be a murderer. I will not be the man who calculated the cost and said nothing. I love you, whatever comes. Max. He folded the letter, did not seal it, would burn it tomorrow. But writing it had settled something in his chest. The choice was made, had been made weeks ago. Tomorrow was just execution. Vogel looked at his clock, 3 in the morning. In 11 hours he would dress in his best uniform, gather his 63 pages, walk into the Reich Chancellery, and tell the most powerful man in Germany that his invasion plan was impossible. He closed the master assessment, turned off his lamp, lay in darkness, not sleeping, just waiting. Somewhere across Berlin, Richter was waiting too, and Steiner, and Bachmann, 4 men who had chosen professional integrity over political survival. 4 men who would speak truth tomorrow, regardless of cost. The city slept around them, unaware that the next day would decide the fate of 140,000 soldiers who did not yet know they had been saved. Dawn came slowly. Vogel rose, showered, shaved carefully. Dressed in his full uniform, every button precise,
every medal aligned. Picked up the master assessment, walked to the door, paused, looked back at his quarters one final time. This might be the last morning he woke here as a Wehrmacht colonel. Tomorrow he might be a civilian, or a prisoner, or worse. But he would wake knowing he had done the right thing. That was worth everything else. Vogel stepped into the hallway, closed the door behind him with a soft click. The meeting was in 4 hours. The truth was ready. Now came the hardest part, speaking it. September 17th, 1940. The Reich Chancellery, Berlin. 2:30 in the afternoon. Conference room 7 was smaller than Vogel remembered. Or perhaps the weight of what was about to happen made the walls feel closer. Oak table, leather chairs, maps of the English Channel spread like accusations across polished wood. 4 men stood waiting, not sitting. Standing felt more honest somehow, more committed to what they were about to do. Grand Admiral Ernst Richter, 64 years old, Iron Cross from Jutland catching lamplight. Face carved by decades of naval service into something harder than the oak table. General Klaus Bachmann, 56, Chief of Army General Staff, Vogel's superior, today his ally. Intelligence Chief Werner Steiner, 53. Thin, careful eyes that had read too many lies to trust easy truths. Carrying a folder marked insufficient data in his precise handwriting, and Maximilian Vogel, 42, the man who had calculated the impossible and found the courage to say so. The master assessment sat on the table before them, 63 pages bound in plain covers, no decoration, no rhetoric, just mathematics and testimony and truth. Richter broke the silence first. His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of command. Gentlemen, we are about to do something unprecedented. We are going to tell our Supreme Commander that his flagship operation cannot be executed, not should not might not, cannot. We must be unified. If one of us wavers, we all fail. So I ask now, before he arrives, who stands with me? Bachmann stepped forward. I stand. Steiner. I stand. Vogel felt the moment crystallize around him. This was the point of no return. After this, there was no retreating to career safety, no hiding behind diplomatic language, no pretending they had not chosen conscience over compliance. I stand. Richter nodded once. Then let history record on September 17th, 1940, the Wehrmacht General Staff chose professional integrity over political expediency. Whatever comes next, we did our duty. Footsteps in the hallway. Precise. Measured. The door opened. Chancellor Victor Schreiber entered like weather, a force that changed the atmosphere simply by arriving. 55 years old. Energy coiled tight beneath formal composure. The man who had conquered Poland and France through will and Wehrmacht excellence. He expected the same excellence to conquer Britain. Vogel's hands were steady. That surprised him. He had thought they might shake. Gentlemen. Schreiber's voice filled the room. I expect we are finalizing the invasion schedule. The weather window opens September 21st. 4 days. Are we ready? Silence. Not the silence of agreement. The silence of men about to detonate carefully placed charges. Richter stepped forward, came to attention, spoke with the clarity of long practice delivering bad news. Mein Führer, I must deliver difficult information. The Kriegsmarine cannot guarantee safe passage for the invasion fleet across the English Channel. Schreiber's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Explain. Richter opened his folder, placed a single page on the table. Force comparison chart, the numbers stark as gravestones. Royal Navy forces available: 5 battleships, 2 battle cruisers, 11 cruisers, over 30 destroyers positioned in channel approaches. Kriegsmarine forces available for channel operations: 0 battleships, 2 cruisers, 4 destroyers. He let the numbers settle like sediment in still water. Force ratio 7.5 to 1. Against us. In waters the British have defended for 300 years. Against naval doctrine that emphasizes aggressive destruction rather than cautious defense. Schreiber leaned forward slightly. The Luftwaffe will provide air cover. Air cover does not stop naval vessels, mein Führer, particularly not at night. British destroyers make 30 knots. Our transport barges make 4 knots, walking speed towed in columns through predictable corridors. 1 British destroyer reaching a transport column kills thousands. They will send more than 1. Richter's voice remained clinical, professional, but Vogel heard the steel underneath. April 1940. Narvik. British destroyers entered defended Norwegian fjords and destroyed 10 of our warships. They accepted casualties to accomplish their mission. They will do the same in the Channel. Except in the Channel, they do not face warships. They face defenseless barges packed with soldiers. He closed the folder. Professional Naval Assessment. Mein Führer, the Kriegsmarine cannot protect the crossing. Not for 10 divisions, not for 10 hours. The mathematics is absolute. We will lose the majority of the invasion force in transit. Those who reach shore will do so without heavy equipment, without adequate supply, without reinforcement capability. This is not naval pessimism. This is mathematical certainty. Schreiber's jaw tightened, but he gestured to Bachmann. General.
The Army's assessment. Bachmann stepped forward, placed his own document on the table. His voice carried 20 years of professional military experience and the weight of conscience. The Army concurs with the naval assessment, mein Führer. We have conducted operational analysis of the landing requirements. To succeed, the first wave must secure beaches with minimal casualties, capture functional port facilities immediately, and establish defensible perimeters before British mobile reserves arrive. We calculate first wave casualties under fire at 85 to 90% before securing any objective. He turned a page, showed supply calculations. 13 divisions require minimum 2,500 tons of supplies daily. Every ton must cross the Channel on vessels the Royal Navy can interdict at will. Our training exercises conducted without enemy opposition in calm seas resulted in 50% equipment loss and complete breakdown of command structure. Under actual combat conditions against prepared defences with British artillery and air attack, the first wave will be destroyed before it can organise. Bachmann's finger traced a line on the map. Brighton to Dover. Even if elements reach shore, they will be isolated, surrounded, without supply. The second wave cannot land under artillery fire. Survivors of the first wave face annihilation within 48 hours. This is not operational difficulty, mein Führer. This is professional assessment of an impossible task. Schreiber turned to Steiner. The intelligence chief looked smaller somehow, but his voice was steady. Intelligence assessment, mein Führer. We are planning the largest amphibious operation in history while functionally blind to enemy capabilities. He opened his folder of reports marked unverified and suspected deception. Our agent network in Britain is compromised. British counterintelligence has identified and captured or turned every significant source. Current intelligence is either outdated or deliberate enemy deception. We cannot confirm British troop strength, cannot verify coastal defence positions, cannot track Royal Navy dispositions in real time, cannot assess RAF actual production. Our estimate is 300 fighters monthly. Intercepted data suggests 560, nearly double. Steiner's careful eyes met Schreiber's directly. We are operating on assumptions, mein Führer. Professional intelligence officers do not recommend operations based on assumptions. We recommend postponement minimum 6 months pending intelligence network reconstruction. Current information state is inadequate for competent operational planning. 3 assessments, 3 branches, 1 conclusion. Impossible. Schreiber's hands rested flat on the table. His expression was unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, dangerous. Colonel Vogel, you planned this operation. You synthesized these assessments. Explain. This was the moment. The culmination of 6 weeks of calculations and 4 weeks of coalition building and 1 sleepless night of final preparation. Vogel stepped forward, placed the master assessment on the table. 63 pages representing 140,000 lives. Mein Führer, I have compiled comprehensive operational analysis of Seelover. The assessment examines naval protection capability, air superiority requirements, intelligence, adequacy, logistics, sustainability, and force-on-force projections. Every factor has been calculated, every dependency verified, every assumption tested. He opened to page 47. The casualty projections. Clean tables, precise numbers. First wave, force 160,000 men. Beach assault casualties under fire 85 to 90%. Estimated killed and wounded, securing initial objectives 136,000 to 144,000 soldiers. Vogel's voice remained steady. The numbers demanded that. They deserved clinical delivery, not emotional pleading. Second wave viability 0. Landing zones will be under sustained artillery fire. British mobile reserves will concentrate on any successful penetration. The first wave cannot secure ports necessary for heavy equipment landing. Supply sustainability across the Channel impossible. Royal Navy interdiction certain within 24 hours. Isolated first wave survivors surrounded no resupply facing numerically superior forces with intimate knowledge of local terrain. He looked up from the pages, met Schreiber's eyes directly. Projected total force loss 95% or higher. Success probability 0.3%. This probability assumes optimal weather, surprise, minimal British preparedness, and favourable tactical outcomes at every decision point, none of which are guaranteed, most of which are unlikely. Vogel turned to the final page, the conclusion he had written and rewritten and finally accepted as truth. Professional military recommendation, Mein Führer Operation Seelover, is not viable with current naval forces' air capabilities and intelligence resources. This is not tactical difficulty. This is mathematical impossibility. Attempting execution will result in catastrophic loss of the invasion force. The operation cannot succeed. He closed the assessment. This is not an invasion plan, Mein Führer. This is a death sentence for 140,000 German soldiers, and I cannot in professional conscience recommend execution. The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere in Berlin, people walked streets and drove cars and lived normal lives. In this room, time had stopped. 4 men waited while 1 man processed the end of his invasion plan. Schreiber stood, walked to the window, looked out over the city. 30 seconds passed. A minute. 90 seconds. Finally he turned. Admiral Richter, you are certain the Navy cannot protect the crossing? With current forces against the Royal Navy in their home waters, yes, Mein Führer, certain. General Bachmann, the Army cannot succeed even if delivered to British beaches, not without naval protection for resupply, not against prepared defences, not with projected casualties. Chief Steiner, intelligence cannot provide adequate information, not within any timeline relevant to current planning. Our network is compromised. We are blind. Schreiber's gaze settled on Vogel, held there.
Colonel Vogel, you calculated these casualties yourself? Yes, mein Führer.
You verified every assessment, every one. And your professional military judgment, not political consideration, not institutional bias, but pure operational analysis, says this operation will fail. Vogel felt the weight of 140,000 lives pressing against his chest, felt the end of his career approaching like storm clouds, felt the moment balance on the edge of a knife. Yes, mein Führer, it will fail, catastrophically. These men will die. We must not do this. The words hung in the air like smoke from artillery. Schreiber returned to the table, placed both hands flat on the surface, looked down at the maps, at the channel, at 21 miles of water that had just proven unconquerable. Then it is decided. He looked up. Operation Seelover is postponed indefinitely. Preparations will continue for deception purposes. The British must believe invasion remains possible, but we will not execute the operation. Forces assigned to Seelover will be reallocated to other operational theatres. Formal documentation will cite weather dependencies and logistical constraints. He looked at each man in sequence. Gentlemen, you have done your duty. Professional honesty is valued even when delivering unwelcome conclusions. Dismissed. Richter, Bachmann, Steiner. Each nodded once, gathered their folders, walked to the door with the precise movements of men who had just survived something. But Schreiber's voice stopped Vogel. "Colonel, remain." The door closed behind the others. 2 men alone in conference room 7. Schreiber gestured to a chair. "Sit, Max." The informality was jarring, dangerous. Vogel sat. Schreiber sat across from him, not at the head of the table, directly opposite, close enough to speak quietly. "Between us, Colonel, no witnesses, no official record, truth." He leaned forward slightly. "You calculated the casualties. You know the numbers." "If I had ordered the invasion anyway against your recommendation, what would have happened?" Vogel kept his voice steady. "First wave, 130 to 140,000 casualties before securing beaches. Second wave, unable to land. Survivors of first wave, complete loss within 48 to 72 hours. Worst military disaster in German history." And the Admiral was correct about the Royal Navy. Completely correct, mein Führer. "The British would have destroyed the transport fleet. We have superior land forces. They have superior naval forces. Water belongs to them. The mathematics is absolute." Schreiber nodded slowly. His expression was unreadable. "I am called many things, Vogel. Tyrant, warmonger, fanatic. Perhaps all are accurate." He paused. "But I am not a fool who drowns armies to satisfy ambition. The Wehrmacht is my greatest weapon. I will not destroy it in the English Channel for political theatre." He stood, walked to the window again. "You understand what happens now. History will record that weather and circumstances forced postponement. Not that my general staff told me the operation was impossible. Not that I accepted their professional judgment. I cannot afford that narrative. The people need to believe in invincibility." "I understand, mein Führer. Your career is not ended, Colonel. You did your duty. You calculated honestly. You spoke truth when asked. That is what professional soldiers do." Schreiber turned from the window. "But we will not speak of this meeting's content outside these walls. Agreed. Agreed. One final question, Max. Do you believe Britain can be defeated now?" Vogel considered carefully. "Not by invasion, not by crossing water against the Royal Navy and prepared defences. Perhaps by other means. Blockade, air campaign, political pressure. But landing armies on British beaches, no force could accomplish that. Not ours." "Not anyone's." Schreiber smiled without humour. Then Britain has won something today. Our respect, our fear, our acknowledgement that some barriers cannot be crossed. Go, Colonel. Vogel stood, saluted, turned to leave. Max. He stopped. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. Many officers would have filed objections quietly and followed orders silently. You chose conscience over compliance. That took courage I do not see often. Vogel nodded once, left the room. The hallway was empty. Afternoon light slanted through windows. Berlin continued its ordinary day, unaware that 140,000 lives had just been saved by mathematics and 4 men willing to speak it. Vogel walked to his office, closed the door, sat at his desk, stared at his hands. They were shaking now. Delayed reaction. The adrenaline of confrontation finally draining. He had done it. Stood before power with truth, risked everything, and somehow impossibly survived. The telephone rang. Richter's voice. Max, well done. The Navy thanks you. Then Bachmann. Colonel, professional integrity prevailed. Be proud. Then Steiner. Vogel. You saved the intelligence service from planning another disaster. Thank you. Finally, Conrad Eisenberg appeared at his door. The young lieutenant's face showed relief and something like awe. Sir, we just received word. Seelover postponed indefinitely. You did it. Vogel looked at the master assessment still on his desk. 63 pages that had changed history. We did it, Conrad. All of us. We chose truth over orders, and 140,000 men will live because of it. While Vogel sat in his Berlin office, processing survival across the Channel, British intelligence intercepted the stand-down. The Ultra program, Britain's secret weapon, the broken Enigma code, delivered decoded German signals to a quiet room where men read enemy intentions in real time. The message was clear. Seelover postponed indefinitely. Invasion fleet dispersing, divisions reassigning. Admiral James Thornton received the news at Portsmouth. The man who had authorized destroyer ramming tactics, who had been prepared to trade 30 ships for one invasion fleet. He stood on the deck of HMS Renown and looked across the channel toward France. 24 years ago, he had fought at Jutland as a young officer. Now he commanded these waters. The Germans were right to fear crossing them. Stand down, invasion alert. Germans have postponed. D. His executive officer. Sir, we won without fighting. We won by being so prepared that fighting us looked like suicide, Commander. The Royal Navy, just by existing, just by being ready, made invasion impossible. That is victory. At RAF Bentley Priory, Air Marshal Robert Sinclair received the same intelligence. Looked at his latest production figures. 560 fighters produced in August, while Germans estimated 300. Every Spitfire they underestimated was a reason not to invade. Near Brighton, Sergeant Thomas Blackwell told his home guard the news. 150 men who had prepared beaches to be killing grounds, who had been ready to fight with the desperation of those defending homes. Lads, official word, Germans aren't coming. Operation cancelled. An older veteran. Tom, you think they'll try again? No, Henry. They looked across that water and saw the Royal Navy ready to drown them. Saw the RAF ready to fill the sky. Saw us waiting on beaches with machine guns and local knowledge. They did the math, decided against it. They'll try other ways, bombs, maybe blockade, but they won't cross water to fight us. We made ourselves too dangerous. December 1940. Vogel's office, Wehrmacht High Command. 3 months had passed. The invasion fleet had dispersed. Divisions originally earmarked for Britain had moved east, to Poland, for training in very different terrain against a very different enemy. The master assessment sat in Vogel's filing cabinet. He pulled it out now. 63 pages. Read the conclusion one final time. Operation Seelover assessed as non-viable. Naval inferiority prevents safe crossing. Air superiority not guaranteed. Intelligence inadequate. Beach assault casualties prohibitive. Supply sustainability impossible. Professional military recommendation. Operation cannot succeed with available resources and capabilities. He had one final task. Official filing of the assessment in Wehrmacht archives. The permanent record. Vogel added a single page at the end. His own commentary. Not required, but necessary. Personal assessment, Colonel M. Vogel. December 1940. This operation would have resulted in catastrophic loss of German military forces. Estimated casualties 95% of invasion force. The Wehrmacht's decision to postpone based on professional military analysis rather than political pressure represents proper application of operational planning principles. Britain was not conquered because Britain made conquest impossible through superior naval forces, adequate air defence, comprehensive coastal preparation and absolute determination to defend their territory. This was not German failure. This was British excellence. Some barriers cannot be crossed. Some islands cannot be conquered. Professional soldiers recognize operational impossibility and adjust strategy accordingly. That is not cowardice. That is competence. He signed the page, placed it in the folder, sealed it, stamped it. Classified. Operational archives. Walked it personally to the filing room. Handed it to the archivist. Operation Seelover. Final assessment. File it. Yes, Colonel. Vogel watched the folder disappear into metal cabinets. Proof that once professional integrity had prevailed. That mathematics had defeated ambition. That 4 men had chosen conscience over career and saved 140,000 lives in the process. He walked back to his office, stood at his window, looked out over Berlin in winter twilight. Somewhere in this city, young men walked streets who would have drowned in the Channel, who would have died on British beaches, who lived because someone calculated the cost and had the courage to say it was too high. They would never know. History would never record their near death. No monuments would be built, no medals awarded, but they lived. And Maximilian Vogel, who had conquered Poland and France through brilliant planning, had conquered something more difficult: his own obedience. He had been given an impossible order, had calculated its impossibility, and had found the courage to speak that truth to power. Not all victories are won with tanks and artillery. Some are won with mathematics and moral courage. Some are won by the men who calculate the impossible and refuse to pretend otherwise. Colonel Maximilian Vogel never received a medal for what he did on September 17, 1940, but he received something more valuable: the knowledge that 140,000 German soldiers lived because he chose truth over compliance, because he stood before the most powerful man in Germany with 63 pages of evidence and said the words that ended careers but saved lives. This operation cannot succeed. These men will die. We must not do this. That is the legacy of the man who calculated the impossible and had the courage to say so. Outside Vogel's window, Berlin twilight faded to darkness. Streetlights flickered on one by one, like the lives he had saved. 140,000 lights. 140,000 men walking home to families unknowing. Somewhere among them, perhaps, was a young soldier who would have died on a British beach, who would grow old instead, Who would tell his grandchildren stories of the war, never knowing he had been saved by a colonel's mathematics and conscience? Vogel turned from the window. Some victories are silent. Some heroes are unknown, but the lives saved count just the same.